What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for your Overwatch. Today we're going to continue down our developer update ARG, because instead of putting stuff the fans want to know on the actual developer updates, they hide them away on live streams, and you got to dig through to find this stuff. It's like a little treasure hunt. It's kind of fun, actually. I kid. Assistant Game Director Aaron Keller went on FREEDO and Nateson's stream. Both of them got to go over to Blizzard headquarters, streaming live from there a few days ago. You can check out both of their streams linked in the description if you want to see these impromptu interviews in full. But like I did in the last video, I'm going to consolidate the information into subjects, because when you have a conversational format, it kind of goes all over the place. Okay, getting into it. We've got major progress points of where Blizzard are thinking in terms of balance, the new mysterious features that are coming out, and more. Let's start off with talking about the first new feature we're going to be getting near the anniversary event. Aaron Keller went to explain that it was actually a passion project that some of the dev team was working on about a year ago, worked out so well that now they're finally shipping it to live. Still no clues on what it actually is. However, he did say in passing that Jeff Kaplan was just going off to record a dev update, which is great news because that also solidifies the timeline of when this is coming. They usually record and then post up the dev update a few weeks later. And as well, any new features are likely going to come to the PTR first before they go to live anyway, just so they can test to make sure everything's functional. So we should be a few short weeks away from whenever this new feature is. Nateson and FREEDO do a good job trying to prod Aaron to divulge as much information as possible, and he gave a quite interesting answer to roll queue. For those of you keeping score at home, with features that the community continuously ask for, Blizzard has a bit of a shifting stance as time goes on. When it first comes up, they say that'll never come to Overwatch. Then they try to explain why it would ruin the game and it wouldn't be a good idea to begin with. Eventually, they start testing it and giving it serious thought, and then finally it ends up being where we're at now, where they're excited about it, and it comes out and they make it seem like it was their idea to begin with. That's the impression I got from Aaron Keller's answer, because he said he can't talk about roll queue, but they talk about it a lot internally. He was very dismissive and said there's a lot of excitement to do something like that. Now, you might think that I'm reading too much into these statements, but I assure you we've seen this Blizzard playbook play out over the years with different features and game modes and whatever. The shifting position is part of their playbook. I've seen it far too many times. Also, the way Aaron Keller answered this question, it was extremely short, but in a way like he had way more to say and he was trying not to say anything. He didn't give the Jeff Kaplan like, oh, I'm really excited about it, but the dev team isn't. Instead, he said, yeah, there's a lot of excitement to do something like that. Next subject, please. I know I'm going a little bit Blizzard whisperer here, but the way this is playing out, I'm very confident that the big update we're getting in summer is Blizzard's answer to roll queue. All the timelines add up. The way they're publicly answering these questions adds up. They just don't want to burn their PR hype before they're ready to come out and announce everything, and don't want to overshadow the release of their new event, which Aaron actually did talk about the responses to Storm Rising and some of the criticism the community had. I'll get to that in a second. I want to talk about balance first, though. Aaron was asked if Mercy would be a character that they looked at to get some retuning, and Aaron's response was quite interesting because he said that because they just released such a massive balance patch, right now they're in a wait-and-see mode, which is to say that they're still collecting data on how everything works after they changed everything, which definitely makes sense. I would say that this balance patch for the ranked environment is one of the best we've ever had. Although it didn't solve it for the Overwatch League for many reasons, I think it did solve it for ranked, which is partially why Aaron and Jeff Kaplan from the other interview were pretty confident in where the balance state was. I think the reason being, if you're worried about 3-3, that isn't so much of a balance problem, it's a aberration of balance that the pros are exploiting due to how objectives, cover, and teamwork works. So because of that, it would be hard for Blizzard to balance hard enough in order to erase it from top pro play without doing damage elsewhere, which leads me to believe that they are gearing up and testing internally balance for Lock 222 or whatever solution they have. I say roll queue and Lock 222 as sort of a shorthand. I don't think they'll wholesale take those ideas. I expect there to be iteration and different development into their own version of it, making sure they account for the different pitfalls that can occur. No matter what, there's going to be downsides to moving into any different system, but with a balance patch to ease the transition, I think it more or less would move over smoothly and give us all the positive benefits we want, forcing DPS and pro play again, and giving us role-specific SR with balanced matches on both sides all the time. There's too many ways that it wins to worry about the shortfall of a few unfortunate side effects that we'll have to deal with at the time. No matter what, they're side effects, right? We're experiencing quite a bit of side effects right now, so it being different, at the very least, is a change, if nothing else. Some other good news that was brought up, Aaron Keller said that there's more heroes in development than they've had in years, which is interesting. Why are they gearing up production so hard, saving extra heroes for a rainy day? Well, the obvious question was asked, are you going to release more than 3 in a year? And Aaron Keller said, I'm not sure, but they just have a lot of things they're working on. He says the dev team's really working hard to turn out a lot of content. I guess we'll see how that pans out over the next coming months. My assumption would be, just like when they add an expansion to StarCraft, Diablo, any of their other games, along comes with it would be a hero pack. If you remember, they did this in the beta, actually, where they released 3 heroes at once. I expect a similar kind of thing whenever Blizzard decides to pull the trigger on Overwatch 2 or the Overwatch expansion, whatever it's going to be, which is where I think they're going to need having these extra heroes in their back pocket. When is that going to come? Does it coincide with free to play? We don't really know. I would expect some big announcement at BlizzCon, though, in this regard. Other cool new stuff that they're bringing out will be some new arcade game modes. And he said they're pretty different from anything they've done before, but similar to other games and shooters that you might be familiar with. Well, this got me all sorts of excited, because although some of these ideas might start off in the arcade, there's a chance that they move towards quick play and ranked in the Overwatch League. Aaron did say that there might be a new core mode eventually. There's excitement around making something like that, but didn't confirm what it would be, when it would come out or anything like that. Again, I think that kind of thing probably goes in with the extra heroes and everything in an expansion. But for a new game mode in arcade, there's some pretty obvious ones that I think other games all have. For example, Counter-Strike, Call of Duty have single life bomb plant modes. I have no idea how this would work or if it's even a good idea. I just kind of want to see what it would look like. In Overwatch, it probably would just be goats running to an objective to plant a bomb, so probably not a good idea, but just throwing that out there. More interesting, I think, would be a multi-flag control like Domination, but more specifically Conquest from Battlefield, at least the way that's scored. I doubt they would do it this way, but here's an interesting thought that I want to put up the flagpole. The good news is I think they could make it right now, where if you take a payload map and sort of cut some sections off that don't work, you pretty easily could make a Domination map out of it, which I think Overwatch players would just jump for joy to play, because it would force a lot of the basic shooter mechanics of the game to the forefront. Because the action is split up across the map a lot more, you sort of bypass the problem that 3-3 creates for a lot of the game modes in Overwatch League right now, where there's no benefit to getting kills, really. It's just hold this space and deny time of the clock on this objective. So we get to watch as the goats comp hokey pokey, where the Brigitte puts her toe on the point, loses her shield, she goes back, and then the tank comes out. They stole the objective and it lasts half a year, and that is the goats meta. Hey! All right, I'm not a singer, obviously. Sorry, we just went for it. I apologize for that, people. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. But if all of the score wasn't tied into just one objective and there was multiple, well, you would need mobility and map control and all the other things that Overwatch used to be able to reward before the power creep of Death Ball set in. But even more so, they could go one step further with the Conquest variant, which is you get points for getting kills as well. Maybe a little bit too complicated for Overwatch's liking, but again, just kind of tossing it out there. That's sort of what I meant when I said that GOATS comp gets scored differently than other team comps in competitive Overwatch right now. Very complex way to explain it, but I think we saw it yesterday with Chengdu Hunters versus the Gladiators on Eichenwald. It doesn't really matter how many kills you get if you have these sustained characters that can hide in corners and step their toe out just to touch the objective. It takes too long to kill them and you just lose because they can survive on the objective and you can't. So essentially they play the game that gets scored and you don't. So get wrecked. Speaking of all these different problems that they are trying to deal with, Aaron did go at length to explain that they were attempting to test some solutions to 2CP, but I guess the bad news, or good news is that a lot of these tests have just confirmed their original thought process of how they go about these different modes working. So for example, they try to deal with the problem where an assault map can be won with 2 team fights. If the attacking team wins the first fight convincingly, they have the resources to go win a second fight, which might just be the entire attacking side and double cap for free. This is what's called in competitive as snowballing, where your first advantage you build grows like a snowball rolling down a hill, leading to a further advantage later. So to fix this, they tried giving defenders an extra spawn room, but it just led to being able to stall on A, flooding out of spawn, and that's not necessarily better gameplay, so they removed that. Apparently, this flooding out of spawn thing is a really big deal. For example, even on the map Nepal, if they put the drop ship or the spawn room too close to the objective, it can be hard to even get the first cap because players can just keep flooding out, jumping on the objective and contesting it forever, and it can be hard to win that definitive first fight to gain control. They also mentioned that the spawn delay system for stalling out of spawn as the defenders might get retuned a bit. I actually think it's working okay right now. It was way worse like a year ago where you would get like 3 free fights as the defenders. You just come out as a stall character, drop the Mei, go win Ice Cube, get your whole team back again like multiple times, rinse and repeat. Now it plays way better. But if you don't know, what they have is a system where the attacking side, when they have extra numbers capping the point, it starts to inflict a respawn penalty on the defenders. So instead of coming back in 10 seconds, it'll start to scale up to be longer and longer, I believe maxing out at 15, to try to help you close out an objective. And it does work, I think, but they said they might tune that a bit more. I think that's important when you add a hero like Wrecking Ball and keep buffing him to be really good, where he can come out of spawn, pop a big adaptive shield, he lasts for a long time, maybe swings around the point for a while, dodging bullets. We got Baptiste now, who throws an immortality field. A lot of these crazy sustain tactics just out of spawn with 1 cooldown are to blame for these objectives being really hard to be able to cap, but it also very easily can go the other way as well. In short, I know the community has a lot of complaints about the map Paris, which sort of has me scratching my head, and I'm not sure why. Because for example, in Overwatch League, it's like the only map where we see DPS get played. So what do you want? There's a lot of people out there that argue we don't want hero bans, we don't want lock 222. Instead, Blizzard should have map design dictate what comps are good or bad. Well, turns out you got to make a map kind of lopsided and crazy in order to get bunker or multi-DPS or whatever to work. So you got to pick your poison with this kind of stuff. There's a reason why the Outlaws can run multi-DPS on Busan Sanctuary with Soldier on one side, Torb on the other, because it's just such a big open arena. The point is just one big crossfire with very little cover. Basically the same thing with Paris. You want to go cap the point, you can get shot from 6 different angles, so you just got to go dislodge them to have a chance. Last point for the video, Aaron Keller did talk about the Storm Rising feedback, and honestly, whenever there's negative criticism floating around on the internet, the developers take it really seriously. He talked about reflecting if there's anything they could have done better with the event. For example, there's a lot of people saying that the mode was too easy, which makes him wonder if they should relabel the game difficulties, because normal is the lowest one, but it's easy, let's be honest. But over there on Legendary, it actually legit is really hard. So a lot of people who are looking for replayability maybe have to look to the harder modes and challenge themselves to really get the most out of some of these PvE events. Because with that put in mind, he says that it's roughly the same length as last year's event, but a lot of people felt like it was much shorter. And I think the reason for that is that in the Storm Rising event, as compared to Retribution, there wasn't as many tension building moments, and it kind of felt more along the lines of the Uprising event originally, the first one, where you sort of just went to a thing, killed some bots, moved on, and it wasn't as well set up like Retribution, where the enemies are popping out of different doors or rappelling down from the ceiling, breaking the glass, all the while the front door is trying to get bursted down. All of this sort of built to the dramatic tension, and each of the bosses or mini bosses were in distinct areas. The sniper comes up first, down a long line of sight, then the heavy assault guy is in a big arena section, then it all builds to a crescendo at the end where there's just tons of craziness and dropships coming. There was more moments like that that sort of built up what was going on and intensified it, whereas in Storm Rising, I didn't really get that feeling. There wasn't a connection to the mission at hand, which I think they really missed some opportunities to have like Maximilian come out and you actually be chasing him in some way, and maybe he pushes a button and then a big bad comes out, he narrowly gets away, that kind of stuff. I mean, Blizzard knows these things. They put it in all the marketing for how the action and tension should feel. I just don't think it translated into the gameplay. That being said, my standards for PvE modes aren't that high, so I thought it was decent, but just not as well put together as Retribution Retribution overall. But realistically, what could we expect when they spent 6 months on it, whereas the last one took a year? I also think there's a problem with the gameplay where if you have a tank, it kind of just makes it a bit easier, whereas in Retribution, you had 3 DPS, so all of them had to play a lot smarter around the map, whereas if you have Winston just tanking damage and cleaving enemies with a big bubble to help you play around, I think it's just a lot easier to play. And it felt like all of the enemy types were scaled to work up against the Blackwatch crew from last year, and just sort of has this feeling like dive comp counters it. Outplaying a lot of those slow enemies and just dancing around them, as opposed to playing like a McCree and Reaper, who are a lot more punishable if you make a positional error up against the AI. Well, guys, that's gonna be everything for today's video. I hope you did enjoy it, and if you did, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out, lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news updates and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been Freedo for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.